Welcome to the Lift Your Story podcast with guest Dr. Morissa Schwartz. Hi, everyone. I am Lorianne. I am that gal from Milton, Ontario, Canada, and I am with.
I am Roy Miller. I'm that guy from Dallas, Texas, and we would like to welcome you to our Lift Your Story podcast.
So this episode, we have Dr. Morissa Schwartz, and she is the owner and founder of Dr. Rissy's writing and marketing company. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Glad to have
pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, I've got to ask you, you're a Guinness World Record holder. Can you elaborate for us on what that is?
Yeah. So when I was a child, I used to make beaded bracelets all the time. It was actually part of physical therapy when I was sick as a kid. But nevertheless, I did it to start as physical therapy. But then I did it because I just loved making jewelry. So I would just bead bracelets all day. And I had as a goal, my first book was about winning contests. I was 17. It was about winning contests. And I thought, what is the ultimate contest to win? A Guinness World Record. So I made the world's longest chain of bracelets, and there was a lot of paperwork. That's the biggest thing that they don't tell you with world records, how much paperwork there is. I spent 2 days just filling out paperwork for them. Had to mail it to the UK because that's where they're headquartered at. And yeah, it was really neat. I broke the record. I made 1,100 bracelets, put them all together, put them on a hose, one of those hose, I don't even know what you call it, the hose holder things that you wind it with the hoses. Yeah. And yeah, broke the record that way.
You by yourself?
Yeah, yes, by myself. Well, that's the thing, okay, because this is where we get into controversy, because the record was broken pretty quickly after I broke it, but it was broken by an entire school of children. And I'm like, how can you compare one person to an entire school? It doesn't seem fair. I should have just like the solo record. So.
Yeah. That's
So
interesting.
it is. So how did you get into the business that you're in and all about the words?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few places I could trace it back. Like, I got my first PayPal account when I was 8 years old. I had Mighty Beans, the little toys, Mighty Beans, you roll them around and stuff. And I loved them and I liked collecting them. But there came a point where I had a bunch of duplicates and I was still missing some of the rarer ones. So my little kid mind realized to get those rare ones, I was going to have to sell some of my duplicates on eBay and purchase the rarer ones from other people. So that's what I did. So that's why I've had a PayPal since I was 8. And that was my first e-commerce venture. So starting at such a young age, I mean, really, that was pretty cool to have that experience. And I kept, selling things pretty much through my whole teenage years. And then when I was like 16 or 17, my friends were all getting jobs at the mall. They hated them. They were miserable. And I was like, what can I do to avoid that? And my mother read this article about freelancing. She shared it with me. And that was when I started freelancing. So I started out editing people's books, mostly children's books. And I had also published my own book at that point. My first book was self-published. I was 17. So I had that experience going on. And I used that to just kind of grow that freelance business. So then when I went for my bachelor's, my master's, my doctorate, I supported myself through that experience, through my freelancing, which then grew into an agency model. Because clients would say, oh, I love your writing. I wish I could use it for my blog. Can you do SEO? Yes, I can. So I would grow that. Hey, can you make a graphic for this? I can't, but I just hired somebody who can. So that's how I kind of grew to this point where now I have 48 team members, each with different specialties. So we've grown so much from just writing to now it's true writing and 360 marketing. And that's how I got into it, pretty much by accident, because I didn't want a job at the mall.
So at 8 years old, you basically started your journey as being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Who would have guessed?
And you used that skill set as you grew older, right? And so now now you've got your own company, which is kind of like almost like an arbitrage system, right? No way.
Yeah, it's like, when people say, I don't like calling us an agency, I like calling us a team, because I'm not outsourcing. Like, these are people. So like James, I went to elementary school with him. He works side by side with me every day. Bella and Madeline and Kylie all went to school together. They went from elementary school with each other through college. So It's not like I'm hiring, you know, when I hear arbitrage or agency, I think of people hiring people in Pakistan or in Australia that they've never met before. I only hire people that I know and who I've worked with for a long time. That's why I like to, you know, what I think sets us apart, that, you know, we have similar experiences, similar educations. Everybody has an advanced degree. I've met these people. I know these people. Yeah.
It's a lot of
Wow.
fun.
That's pretty neat. So you've got a network that you basically have known from childhood.
Yeah, a lot of them I have. Some of them, you know, I've met through networking events. I'm a member of a bunch of different women's and entrepreneurial groups, so a lot of them I met there. My team is about 95% women, I guess, as a result. But yeah, that's the difference. I mean, we're constantly every day talking, and I'm full of probably about eight. I think 8 of the 48 people are full time, where I'm their only source of income, I'm their only client. So. Yeah.
That's
Wow.
fantastic. Now I have a question. Do you have a specific target market that you go after, or?
Yeah. So, there are a few different things with that. I mean, there are companies and clients that I definitely don't work with. Like, we've been approached, as silly as this sounds, by students. They find out we're a writing company and they ask us to write their school reports. Like, we don't do that. We also have had like companies that are just really like an energy drink company asking us to make all these unfounded claims. We don't do that. But we have worked with companies as big as Microsoft and HP. We wrote their guidebooks. We wrote Microsoft Suites for 3 months. You know, they just literally brought us in to write about their new IoT division, and we still do some guidebook work for them. But we've also worked with small companies like a fancy napkin company. So, I mean, we work with a wide variety of companies. I would say our most popular are authors. Since I'm an author and I also own a book publishing company, we have a lot of authors that want to work with us because we know how to sell books. We also get a lot of small businesses in. I grew up in my parents' mom and pop carpet shop, literally from the time I was a week old. You know, they brought me there for the first time. So I have small business in my heart. So we work with a lot of small businesses. And then lately, pretty much the last year, we've worked with a lot of medical companies or herbal natural medicines, because that's definitely growing a lot. And they were not really affected by the events of the past year as much as some others. So we've seen a lot more of those clients coming in.
So y'all do technical writing as well then?
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. For HP, we had to get so technical. We had to interview 8 different people at that company, asking them, you know, SME questions.
Yeah.
It's a whole different ballgame when it comes from technical writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, technical writing is, well, I can't tell you how many technical manuals or specifications I've read through in my life. Is like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But when they're well written and easy to understand, it sure makes it a lot easier to figure out how something works in the procedures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Funny story, I wrote my very first technical one. It was for a voicemail system. That's a few years ago. And I kind of wrote it like a for dummies book, and they wanted it more serious. And yet, you know, 2 years later, the for dummies comes out, and I'm going, hey, that was my idea. Obviously not. Somebody else was thinking the same thing, but it had that sort of context, right? Which was more fun because it's an administrative assistant who's going to be reading it, most likely, and they're going to need to know it. And I mean, the simpler it is, the easier it is for them to understand. So that was my concept behind it. But anyway,
That makes a lot of sense.
it didn't go too well, but that's okay. I still have it, and I read it, and I'm going, hey, I think it's great.
See, I'm a big believer in that, in the simplicity. I taught a webinar on SEO the other day, and that was my biggest takeaway is, you know, we don't need big fancy words and ways to describe things. And I think like SEO, so much of that, you know, is just big words making it sound more complicated than it is. And that's frustrating to me, you know, even when I was going to school, you know, getting a doctorate in literature, focused in writing, that was one of my biggest peeves, was just like, you don't need to make it extra complicated, just simple. So I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah, I always say, hey, pretend I'm a third grader and tell me about it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, make it simple and easy, not complicated. So you say you're a book publisher as well?
Yeah, so I own Gen Z Publishing. We've published 115 books over the past, we were incorporated, it'll be 6 years in November. So over the past 5.5 years, we've published 115 books, mostly young adult. That's where the whole Gen Z name started. So I published my first book. I wrote my first book when I was like 12. I didn't publish or anything. Then at age 17, I self-published my first book. At 21, I had my first book traditionally published and learned a lot about the publishing process in doing that. And in, going from being a self-published author to a traditionally published author, I learned about hybrid publishers and vanity publishers and just how icky some of this stuff is, and was like, okay, I want to make a safe place for authors where nobody's going to get taken advantage of, where they can have good dialogues and write books that are relevant to today's current events and climate. So yeah, that was how I started Gen Z. And most of our books, they're young adult, and they have some kind of innovative take. That's where the Gen Z name comes from.
That's great. So along with the publishing, you also provide them with the marketing as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is an important component. A lot of people think that write it and they will buy it, and that's not the case. You have to put a lot of your own work into it, as well as the marketing company.
Sure.
Yeah.
That is great.
Well, that's the hardest part, isn't it? The marketing.
Yeah, you gotta get them excited about it.
Yeah.
Yes. So when it comes to that, I mean, there's a lot of books out there now. I mean, quite a few books that I hear, there's people write them and they go, I'm number one on Amazon. Do you also give them the sort of, I guess, the training or the tools to work that, to be able to help them help you to build that success of being, renowned on Amazon, being a number one, or so on?
Yeah. So at Gen Z, I mean, we are the publisher. So like, we're doing all that for them. All they have to do in that case is pretty much provide the book, and boom, we have a traditional kind of a setting where they're not paying us a dime. We're literally just splitting royalties. So it's in our best interest to make sure that we're doing everything right. And what we do with that is the bestseller thing. There are a lot of ways to become a bestseller that people do. Like, they'll classify themselves in smaller genres and things like that. There are different practices that can be done. So for example, we had an author, one of our first authors came to us. He is a poet, and poetry is a very tough sell, right? Like, who's walking into Barnes & Noble going, yeah, I'll take your finest poetry book. But if you can think of a way to classify that author in a way that's going to be appealing, that's going to get you better results. So we classified him under American poetry, and there are not that many books under there that are newer. I think number 2 is like a book written in the 1800s, like one of the classics. So things like that. So he became a bestseller. That's why Amazon gets a little bit of grief with that, with everybody calling themselves bestsellers. Yeah, he's a bestseller in that category, but so that's one way that people do the bestseller thing. But the way that we do it, yes, we do that as well to get them bestseller in that category. But then once they are the bestseller for that category, we can help get more reviews. We use like NetGalley. We reach out to influencers. We do a lot of practices like that to get him more organically ranking in like a larger category like poetry, or his book dealt a lot with aging, so books in the aging category. And a lot of people just stop, they go, okay, I'm a bestseller, that's it. We like using that to go to the next step, to keep ranking them higher and higher, so that they are a bestseller in even bigger categories.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I know a trend now is collaborative books. 25 people submit, chapter or whatever. And, are you seeing any of that in what you do?
Yeah, we actually did one of those. We took all of our authors and said, hey, anybody who wants to submit a book about strangers, anybody who wants to submit a story or writings about strangers, please do. We're creating an anthology about strangers. And about 25 of our authors each contributed a story or a chapter to this book about strangers. It was pretty neat. It was, you know, something I think that was really good for our community. So yeah, I do like the collaborative approach. You know, some of them that you're talking about, they're like charging people, you know, hey, if you want to be featured in our book, pay us $1,000 and we'll publish you. We don't do anything like that. I think if it's a natural, organic thing, maybe with a community that you already have, that's a good place to go with it. One of my favorite books, though, actually is Tools for Titans by, oh my gosh, I just blanked on his name. But basically what he does in there is he has 100 people that he emails, and he just says to them, hey, what are your favorite tools? What's your favorite quote? What's your favorite book? And they all answer it, and everybody gets a chapter. It's Tim Ferriss's Tools for Titans.
Oh yeah, 4-hour work week.
Yeah, he did 4-hour work week. Now he did this one more recently in 2017. So good. That kind of collaborative book, I really like that, because he has people from famous chefs to business people to movie stars, like everybody's in this book. It's so good. So that kind of collaborative effort, I think, you know, that's a win-win. You get so much out of it, so much value.
That is so cool. What a great idea.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier, we have to ask this question. So we have, of course, introduced as Dr. Morissa, but you have a nickname.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with Rissy?
Yeah, so Rissy was a childhood nickname. My friends and family still pretty much have always called me Rissy. And, you know, when naming the business, so I called Gen Z, which is the LLC. I called Gen Z because it was 2015. It was before Generation Z was even a name. They didn't have a name at that point. So I thought, oh, you know, it'd be a cool name, Gen Z. It sounds so futuristic. It sounds like, you know, we're the innovators. So I penned that name. That's Gen Z LLC. And then I thought, you know what? I probably am going to need a name for this marketing and writing work that I'm doing for non-authors. So, you know, I was getting my doctorate at that point, and I thought, well, calling it Dr. Schwartz or just saying, you know, Dr. Schwartz would be pretentious, because I want to have the title doctor so people know, oh, okay, yeah, this isn't just some kid off, you know, the internet who doesn't know what they're doing. This is a person who's actually devoted themselves to being educated and to learning and knows what they're doing. So I wanted that doctor name in there. I worked hard for it. And at that point, you know, I was working hard for it. But I didn't want it to, like, I think I'm very down to earth. I'm a hamburger type person, you know, given the choice between a hamburger and a you know, big fancy 10-course meal, I'll take the hamburger. So I want to portray that, you know, I'm down to earth. I'm not, you know, so I thought Dr. Rissy, that's the right marrying of super professional and that kind of laid back, hey, I'm your friend kind of person.
I love it.
Yeah. I think that's a great approach. Very accessible.
Yeah.
I'm sort of having fun. I'm sorry. I'm a handwriting analyst. I got my master's in that. See, I do my studying too. And I'm looking at how you wrote your Rissy in the background. And it just quickly shows that you have a very flowing mind thought. So your thoughts flow very nicely. If that is your signature that you did, that's what it says.
Well, that is very, I've never met him. I actually, you probably saw that it's so popular on Netflix. They have that new Mormon document. I forgot the name of it, but basically it came down to somebody who was forging Mormon documents, and it was the handwriting analyst who saved the day and figured it out. But I didn't draw that. My handwriting is so notoriously bad. Everybody says it's so bad. Thank gosh now I could just type all the time, because it's, yeah. I wish that were my flowy handwriting.
So they look at your handwriting and say, "Oh, I see you are a doctor."
Yeah, I think so.
But yes, but not medical.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's
It's
great.
fun. You can own it though. Own that signature. Just it's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, Maria, she's been my graphics person for almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in August. That's her beautiful work. So I'll tell her she has a flowing style.
I think I like the color too, the background.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that color. I think it looks really good together.
Which of course reflects the wonderful work that you do in marketing, because that's, you know, that's important. how people see it.
Absolutely.
So, do you have a particular demographic in your work?
Yeah, it's funny because when I started Gen Z, I thought most of our authors were going to be like college kids, like younger, because that was what I was at that point. But it's turned out, I mean, we work with such a diverse range of people. Most of that, I would say 95%, though, the thing that they all have in common is that they have an entrepreneurial spirit, whether they're an actual entrepreneur or an author who, is an entrepreneur at heart because they want to promote their book. And they're also just driven and positive, wanting to do some good and to start positive dialogues. That's pretty much what all of my clients have in common. And then the actual demographics of where they live and who they are, that's I mean, I've worked with people from pretty much every continent. Most of the folks that we work with are on the East Coast, but I mean, we have worked with people on every continent, and every age, every demographic.
Yeah.
I just had a quick question too. So I just thought of this for the publishing. Now there is the self-publishing as to what extent. So I would imagine you offer the editing, formatting, and such. But do you also have a process of saying, yes, we'll take this book on to publish, or no, we won't publish this book?
Yeah.
Do you ever have refusals that you put out there?
Yeah, and that is my least favorite part. So when I was pitching my book, think I was 20, 21, just a kid. I had passion. So I'm pitching my book to all these publishing companies, and I literally pitched it to like 100 of them. And maybe 2 of them got back to me with like any response at all, saying no, except the one who said yes. But like they were just, the worst part was not knowing. So when I started my company, I knew we were going to need to turn people down because we don't charge. We're not a vanity publisher. It is strictly 50-50, kind of royalty splitting. So I realized, okay, we're going to need to turn people down, but I didn't want to just ghost them like what was done to me because that just felt so bad not knowing. So I made sure from the beginning that I had somebody on the team, at least one person who would read each query and then give feedback to the author. If we're not publishing the book, say why. Say something like, I think that your idea is really great, but maybe your character should be fleshed out a little bit more. Please come back to us, if you choose to do that. So now we're at the point where we only accept maybe 5% of the people who query their books to us, and that's just because of the amazing talent that we've gotten. It's led us to be scheduled up through 2022. So we literally can't publish any new books until 2022. So that's making us be extra selective. But yeah. So that process, I hate saying no. I hate turning people. That actually just happened yesterday. Where such a talented poet, and I said to her, we're booked out through 2022. We can use X, Y, and Z. Should be tweaked for publishing. If you're interested, we can do that. Yeah.
Interesting, because I love your model, by the way, the 50-50. I mean, for those, you would know this, but I mean, a lot of the big publishing houses, and I know what that feels like, but back in my day, they did write you back a rejection letter. I have 300 of them, so I know. It's unfortunate that they're ghosting now because that wasn't the way back when I first started. Yeah. But, and then I think, I don't know if it's still the way, but it was only like a 15% commission. When they took on your book as a publisher. So that's 50-50, just for listeners out there to understand. Again, I don't know today what the big publishers are offering, but definitely a 50-50 is an amazing deal, particularly when you're taking on a lot of the risk. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So where would people be able to find you?
Yes, drrissy.com. I'm also Morissa Schwartz or Dr. Rissy on pretty much every social media platform. If you just type in Morissa Schwartz or Dr. Rissy, you'll find me.
Beautiful. Okay. And again, to the listeners, like, seriously, it's a great opportunity, but then again, you have to be one of those 5%, and but it's worth it. It really is. As a writer, really appreciate you being here and sharing everything with us.
Oh,
Really
heck yeah. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
learned a lot, and I really don't think I've seen a model like yours out there. So, so congratulations on that
Well,
and on
thank you.
everything.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're an innovator.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
All right.
Okay, it was
Take
a
care.
pleasure having you on our program.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit us at lifterstory.com.